Hi, folks. I hope you're doing well. I recently got a question from a viewer who asked, do I really find value in seeking mentorship? And the short answer is yes. I continue to learn from my mentors. And I think probably the greatest lesson that they have taught me is the importance of humility, to remain humble, more importantly, to remain a humble student. Never feeling like you've arrived, never feeling like you know everything, always seeking to learn more, understand more, so that you can grow more. And I wanted to discuss that in more detail in today's video. One of the best books that I was ever referred to is a book called um, Mindset. Most people who know this book, or most people who read this book, think the book is about the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And yes, it is that. But for me, it's slightly more than just comparing a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. I think there's a deeper lesson hidden in there. Or let me rather say there's a deeper lesson that I took out of the book. And that's what I want to discuss today. What the book taught me is that the most dangerous day in your life is not the day that you fail. The most dangerous day in your life is the day that you think you have arrived. The day you secretly decide, I know enough, I'm good enough, I figured it all out, I'm the man. Because from that moment on, learning slows down. And I think this is a not a problem, that's not the right phrasing. I think it's something I wish is discussed more in society, because a lot of people actively stop learning once they leave school. They think like, okay, whether it's at matric, whether it's at your degree, whether it's all the way to PhD, once people reach a certain level where they feel I'm educated enough, it's the day they stop learning. And one of the greatest lessons that my mentors have taught me is that learning never stops. You learn until the day that you pass away, and you must actively open your mind to that thought. You must actively see yourself as a student. Because when learning slows down, what happens is that reality starts to move faster than you do. If you look around, I'm sure we all have examples in our lives of people who were some of the most impressive people in our lives at some point. And now we look at them and we say, what happened to him? What happened to her? And it's not because those people became lazier or became stupid or lost their intelligence. For me, when I look at those people in my life as to what happened there, I typically find that they stopped updating themselves. They become attached to a version of themselves that used to work but doesn't work anymore. And we all have these examples in our lives that we can look to: the successful business owner who doesn't know how to adapt, the manager who can't learn from younger people, is not humble enough to learn from their own staff, the investor who keeps using yesterday's playbook because it worked for them in the 2008 global financial crisis, but it didn't necessarily work in the COVID crisis. Those are two different scenarios. And when I look at these people, the pattern is always the same. Past success becomes future blindness. And that's why I say that's probably the most dangerous day in your life. It's not when you fail, it's when you actually succeed and then tell yourself that I have now arrived. Past success becomes future blindness. And that's why humility is so valuable. And that's why it's a lesson that I've fully taken on board, and one that I intend to teach my children. Not because it's morally superior, but because it's functional, extremely functional in creating a successful life, whether that is in wealth, in your career, in your health, in any area of your life that you want to succeed in. Because humility keeps you learning. It allows you to say, I might be wrong, I may be missing something, someone else may know better. And that creates an incredible advantage, because Reality is constantly changing. The only constant is change. Markets change, technology changes, industries change, people change, you change. You should be changing. And the question is whether your thinking is changing with all of this. One of the most expensive mistakes intelligent people make is confusing experience with understanding. Confusing experience with understanding. Experience tells you what happened. Understanding tells you why it happened. Because if you don't understand why, you can't adapt when conditions change. And that's why some people you find keep growing long after everyone expected them to plateau. They're not necessarily smarter or hardworking or anything like that. I typically find they're just more willing to remain students. They're more willing to remain humble and build their identity around the fact that they don't know everything. They're more willing to remain students because the beginner mindset is a very strange thing. It asks questions, it stays curious, it doesn't need to appear knowledgeable. And I think that's one of the biggest diseases of modern society. The pressure to always feel like you need to have an opinion. It is extremely acceptable to simply say, I don't know. I don't have an informed opinion on that subject. What is wrong with that? And having a student mindset is actually what ironically leads to real expertise. Because the person who thinks they know everything stops looking. And the person who knows everything doesn't keep discovering. Which brings us to something else that I've noticed. The people I admire the most all share one characteristic. No matter how successful they become, they remain teachable. All of my mentors, when we sit down and we have our sessions, as much as they're teaching me, they're constantly asking me for feedback and saying, what are my viewpoints on those things? And they actively encourage me to push back where I can, because as much as I'm trying to learn from them as a mentee, they have that student mindset and they want me to teach them wherever possible. No matter how successful they have become, no matter how successful they are, they remain teachable. They don't protect their status, they don't protect their ego, they protect their ability to learn. And that's a very important distinction. They don't protect their status, they protect their ability to learn. Because status makes you look smarter, seem smarter. Learning actually makes you smarter. And only one of those compounds. So for me, as I was journaling this morning, the question I wrote is, where have I started acting like an expert when I should still be acting like a student? Where have I started acting like an expert when I should still be acting like a student? Because growth rarely ends when you run out of talent. It usually ends when you run out of curiosity. So here I am, remaining a humble student and asking you to do the same.